EOS, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, was introduced by Gino Wickman in this book called Traction. The EOS Focus Day is conducted first to lay out the groundwork for EOS implementation in the organization. It is conducted to start creating traction around the efforts and organizing and executing around priorities. The vision building day will come next, but first we get some traction before creating the vision. So let's get started here. The objectives of this session to begin with are learning the 5 leadership abilities, creating organizational accountability chart for the organization, establishing company and individual rocks for the next quarter, learning the level 10 meeting agenda, and lastly, establishing a company scorecard. Now, practicality is key as we dig in and start implementing the EOS components. Good to be curious about specific concepts, but don't need to dig into everything. Don't try to boil the ocean. Focus on these session objectives in the focus day. Here's the EOS process. This was first introduced by Gino Wickman in the book called Traction. This process has been used worldwide to scale companies around the world very successfully. Our focus today is the focus day, which is all this stuff right here. Hitting the ceiling, accountability chart, rocks, meeting pulse, scorecard. Let's get going. Here's the focus day agenda. First, we're going to start with checking in with each other. Then we're going to introduce the hitting the ceiling methodology. Accountability chart, exactly what it is. How do you make one? Rocks. The meeting pulse, exactly how the meetings take place. What is it that you're accomplishing in that meeting pulse? Looking at the scorecard, the next steps for after the focus day, and then conclusion. Depending on the size of your leadership team, let's say if it's 6 people, for example, it could take around 7 hours on average to run this focus day agenda. So give plenty of time so you don't run out of time at the end and rushing. Focus on quality and not quantity because you want all of these fundamentals to really sink in with everyone. You want to start every EOS session by humanizing the whole process. That goes for sessions, it goes for also L10 meetings, which we'll talk about later. So here you want to do a check-in with each person in the leadership team. Have each of them say their name, their role briefly, exactly what it is that they do. Make sure it's brief. Then some good news, personal and professional they can share. They might not know exactly what the session has to offer, but still have them help you understand what they are expecting from the session. This process should not take more than 5 minutes for each person. The leadership team needs to understand that instead of working inside the business, today you're going to be working on the business in this focus day. And the same thing is going to go for additional sessions like vision building and quarterly meetings. So you're going to step out of your individual roles in the business and you're going to assume like you are board of directors for the business to working on the business. Put aside your roles, put aside your past beliefs and egos, and think of what's best for the greater good of the company, of the organization. The EOS journey starts by first becoming both healthy and smart. How do we do what we do? What are our strategies that we use to deliver our product and service? How do we provide further organizational clarity? How do we ensure that no politics in the organization exist? How do we have healthy, smart conversations, always work united as a team? All these things come first. Then, how do you become a leadership team that has a few handful of rules, like, for example, like good parents, and then repeating them often, being consistent with them as you go through your day-to-day responsibilities, engaging your teams. Taking responsibility as the team leads is very important. When you look around, you should see all the great stuff. And if you don't see great stuff, you should be able to talk about the not great stuff. And then third over here, running on one operating system. Very important that EOS stands for Entrepreneur Operating System. And the reason the operating system words are in there is because you use that everything in the tools in EOS to hire people, fire people, reward them, guide them, keeping things on pace, make short-term goals, long-term goals, work on issues, and a whole lot more, which we'll be talking about. And lastly here, strengthening the 6 key components of the business. That is what we're going to talk about in the next slide. Here are the 6 key components that Gino Wickman and his book Traction introduced us to. It works really well, this EOS model, for 10 people to 250 people. Okay, so 10 employees to 250 employees, this works really well for. Now, having said that, if you have less people or if you have more people, it still might work well, but the sweet spot is 10 people to 250 people. Everything here starts with a vision, which we'll go into later. Okay, then you have data, scorecards, your measurables, your process where everything is documented. Everybody needs to follow the processes, obviously. Traction, that you go all the time, building your rocks, making your meeting pulse, and then making sure you hit everything the right way. Working on issues in the issues list regularly in every meeting. And then you have your people component. Are the right people in your company? Are they in the right seats? And if not, taking action. So we're going to go into all that stuff, but keep in mind that these are the 6 components that make up the EOS model as introduced by Gino Wickman once again in Traction. So let's get into that. Hitting the ceiling is inevitable, but there's hope. Hitting the ceiling is another code word for being stuck. Now, this can happen as a company, at a division level, department level, or even as an individual level. What you do after is very important. So first, get clarity. What is happening? Why is it happening? Are the right people in the right seats? Do you have the right vision in place for the company? Then after that, move on to the 5 leadership abilities you must master to break through that ceiling. Company breakthroughs happen once the leadership team starts utilizing the 5 leadership abilities, and here they are. First, simplify. Your ability to simplify, eliminating complexity and reducing everything to just the essential. Second, delegate and elevate. Your ability to delegate, freeing and elevating yourself to do what you do best to your unique ability, and doing the same for every person in your organization. Number 3 is predict. Your ability to predict, choosing the right path, long-term as well as short-term. Number 4 is systemize. Documenting, getting everyone to follow the essential procedural steps in your company's core processes. And last is structure. Your ability to structure and define and organize the seats or positions in your organization to reduce complexity and increase clarity, increase communication, and better accountability. EOS teaches us how to develop each of these 5 leadership abilities. You determine the right structure for your organization using the accountability chart. Now, an accountability chart is different than an organization chart. An accountability chart shows who is accountable for what. It is different than an organization chart because an organization chart shows who is reporting to who. So it's more reporting relationships within an organization. An EOS accountability chart clarifies each function's roles and responsibilities. Following are the steps to create the accountability chart. First thing you do is you create the accountability chart for each department and each function within the department. Then we focus on function and roles. So each box basically representing the function and a few specific roles within the function. We're not focusing on people. So this is not an organization chart. This is the accountability chart. Here we go, identifying and listing 4 to 5 roles for each function. And I'll show you all that stuff in a few minutes. Working on each function for about 3 minutes, not overthinking it. So we do that, 30 minutes solo activity. Each leader goes and does this on his or her own, and then we come together to review all the functions. Let's look at an example of an accountability chart. This is for the fictional company called Bridgewood. Okay? I used Microsoft PowerPoint to make this thing, you can use whichever software makes the most sense. Key things to remember, first we're starting with just making boxes with the actual function name. So visionary is a function, integrator is a function. Same thing with all these headings here, sales, product, finance director, etc. Then beneath each function, you have the roles. These are the different roles of the visionary. Okay, same thing with integrator. Here are the roles for the integrator. Now, I'm sure you'll notice over here it says LMA for all of these things over here. Anybody who's a director or integrator has LMA. And I mentioned over here that LMA stands for Leadership Management Accountability. It's an EOS term, which basically says you are responsible for somebody else reporting to you. So think of it this way. If there is a function box underneath another function box, then there's LMA always there, with the exception of visionary. Visionary does not have LMA. The visionary does not have a reporting structure underneath him or her. Okay, that's the only exception. Okay, I'm not gonna go read every single role here, but once again, each box, like it says over here, needs function, which is the top, roles, which I would suggest 5 as the max, and then assignment. That assignment is the actual person, but that's going to go later. First, you make the organization chart with the boxes, then you assign people to the boxes. Function first, then people. And I'm just going to give you a quick tour of the remaining PowerPoint slides over here. Once again, demo company, Bridgewood. So for each of these functions, sales, product, finance, customer success, and marketing, I have stuff built out. For sales director, the person reporting under her, let's say, customer renewals director, account executive for new accounts, partner director. Once again, notice that LMA is only present if there's a box underneath it. Otherwise, there is no LMA. And then it's got all the functions that this, all the roles that this function will be doing. Same thing here, marketing director, product director, and so forth. Okay, and make it as specific as possible. So it's understood exactly what the product director is doing, responsible for product support, resource allocation, for example, team management, obviously, etc. Same thing for marketing director, brand management, consistency, etc., etc. Make it very specific. So I got this all built out over here. The finance is the only one that I don't have built out, but this is a good starting point for how to make an accountability chart. So once you have the accountability chart filled out, then the next thing you want to do is fill it with people. So fill each seat with an actual person's name. Okay. Here's what to keep in mind. 2 people can never be in the same function box. Never. The person who gets it, wants it, and has the capacity to do it, GWC, that's the EOS term as well, that's the person you want in each box. Okay, very important. GWC, keep that in mind, and 2 people can never be in the same function box. Here's what an accountability chart starts looking like when you start putting people's names and stuff in there. So you got the visionary, Asif Rahmani, I put myself in there, integrator, Henrietta Longer, and then directors of each department. Remember, once again, that anytime you see LMA, that's Leadership Management Accountability. Put that here as well, LMA. And that is going to be whenever there is a person underneath that person. So there's a box underneath this box, it's always going to be LMA. So I got Asif, then I got Henrietta Longer, and then below that I got sales, product, finance, customer success, and marketing. Now, these 4 boxes have different people, but this middle box, finance director, has the same person, and that's okay. It's going to be sometimes when the same person is, in this case, an integrator and a finance director. That's going to happen. Main thing to remember is 2 people cannot be in the same box, but the same person can be in multiple boxes. And obviously, you want to try to replace the person, delegate and elevate with other people as you can. So Henrietta should be looking to replace herself as a finance director with somebody else in here if she's the integrator as well. And then you keep on going down In other slides, it doesn't have to be PowerPoint, it could be whatever makes sense for you. But in this slides, let's say, you can say the next one is product director. So we're continuing on from this box, Alex Robbins being the product director. And Alex is a, oops, go back here again. Alex, in this case, is a product director, has underneath him software architect, Megan, developer, also Megan. So once again, they don't have a separate developer. Software architect is wearing two hats. And then you have QA testing lead, Isaiah. You have support lead, Diego. Okay, once again, one person per box, but the same person can be in multiple boxes. That's how the accountability chart works. And last point, once again, to reiterate, you see the LMA only when there's someone underneath it, right here. Actually, in this case, there is a mistake. This should not have LMA. That's how it should be because Isaiah does not have anybody reporting to him, so there is no leadership, management, accountability. And that can also be the case when there was some box underneath and that person is gone. Then you take the box away and then you take the LMA away as well. Okay, and that's how it works. Now that we have our accountability chart in place and with people inside the accountability chart, next thing to talk about are rocks. Rocks are big priorities in the next 90 days. Okay. Another way of saying goals. Rocks is the terminology that EOS uses. That's why we're going to use that. It's very important to use the same terminology all throughout so people get comfortable with the exact terminology to use within the company, for EOS in this case. So once again, rocks are or goals, big priorities in the next 90 days. The power of rocks is that it creates focus on the big things and everything else will follow after that. But the first things that must be done, you have to focus on them first. The concept of rocks comes from this experiment of if you want to fit in rocks, pebbles, sand, and water in a jar, you always start with rocks first, big priorities. Then pebbles, that's day-to-day tasks, sand, which is daily interruptions, things do happen, and water is everything else. Okay, so rocks first, pebbles, sand, and water. And we're focusing on rocks right now. Now, you also want to try to make the rocks as SMART as possible. I'm sure you know the acronym of SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. When I say attainable, by the way, obviously it should be realistic and attainable, like SMART says, but it should still be a stretch rock, a stretch goal. You don't want to be too comfortable with that either. Okay. Then lastly over here, establishing 3 to 7 company rocks for the quarter, making sure they're SMART, like I just said right now. Once you have the 3 to 7 company rocks, then you start going down and having rocks for each individual. Not each function department, but we're talking about each individual. Okay. You want to have rocks for each individual. You define the rocks, you define what does success look like for that rock, and then you maybe even have some interim milestones and dates to achieve that rock within that 90 days. And we'll go deeper into all of that within this focus day session and additional sessions after that as well. Let's talk about meetings. So the current big issue with meeting, they're held at a irregular cadence, right? And then everyone rushes before the meeting to get all the tasks done. So here's an example of what happens commonly. You got the first meeting, everyone has done a lot of work before the meeting and everybody's super pumped up with all the things we got to do. Great. And then nothing happens. Something happens, maybe then nothing happens. Activity is just really stagnating. Procrastination happens. And then the boss gets concerned about something not getting done, calls a meeting. Let's say calls a meeting right here somewhere and everybody's just rushing before the next meeting to get everything done. And usually the interval between these meetings, let's say a month or even more. So now you have very irregular and long intervals between meetings, and then things are just not getting done. So the solution to that especially what EOS proposes here, is that you want to shorten the interval between meetings. Okay, so within the same time period, let's say this box was a month, same thing, this box is a month, but then between the month, maybe you're having the first meeting here, second meeting, second week, third meeting, third week, fourth meeting, fourth week over here. Regular meetings, everybody knows that we're going to meet every week. So even if they do procrastinate for a bit, the activity happens right before the meeting and all the tasks get done before the meeting. Obviously, it has to be realistic, things that can be done within a 7-day period, which is what this would be. But shortening the time between meetings will ensure that the expectations are set. We're going to be meeting and be accountable to each other every week to get stuff done. EOS mandates something called an L10 meeting. Okay, L10. L10 stands for level 10. Basically, you're shooting for a 10 out of 10 rating by everyone for every meeting that you have. Now, don't get me wrong, you're not going to get a 10 out of 10 every time, but that's what you're shooting for. Maybe in the beginning, you're going to get 5, 6, 7 people saying, I'm not sure if this is really working, but you're going for a level 10 score at the end. The 5 points for a L10 meeting pulse are as following. First, main thing, it has to be same day of the week. Let's say you choose the Wednesday, then it's got to be Wednesday every week. You choose Monday, it's got to be Monday every week. Whatever you choose, it's got to be the same day, not just that, but the same time every week also. Okay, and same agenda. You notice the commonness over here, the same, same. That breeds commonality. It breeds the expectation that it's going to be the same thing that we're going to be following. There's not curveballs being thrown all the time. And then two last very important things. It's got to start on time and it's got to end on time. Many people complain about this, that meetings just take forever or they don't start on time. Some people are on time, some people are not on time. Very important to keep it on a timely basis and having that commonality of the same day of the week, same time, same agenda, making it everything a pulse, a routine that's followed on a regular basis. Let's talk about the agenda for this meeting, for the L10 meeting weekly. First thing, we're going to have a segue, always starting with good news, not just any news, but good news by each person. So each person can share with a total of 5 minutes, not 5 minutes each, but total of 5 minutes, anything personal or professional they want to share, something about themselves, playing sports, having a success somewhere, about their kids, about parents, about whatever they want to talk about, but very briefly, usually about a minute or less per person. Then scorecard. Now, scorecard can be kept in Microsoft Excel, Google Sheets. It could be in any format, whatever. But you're going into scorecard and you're reviewing the scorecard in that 5 minutes altogether. Which I know is going to be very quick. You're just reporting. Each person is reporting. There's no discussion at this time. Same thing with rocks. Rocks is also just a reporting and not a discussion. That's why it takes 5 minutes for, let's say, 4 or 5 team members in the actual group to just report. Now, the reporting for scorecard and reporting for rocks is basically each person going over their scorecard item and rock and saying on track or off track. So I go over scorecard item saying, okay, this is on track, and something that's off track. Same thing for rocks, on track, or off track. As soon as a person says off track, the person who's taking, a different person hopefully, who's taking notes for this meeting, that person is going to take that particular item, whether it be a scorecard or rock, and is going to put that item in the later issues solving track, which is I'm going to go over in a minute. And that's where we're going to discuss that issue that's off track. Next, customer headlines. Many people who in the meeting are interfacing with customers, could be support, could be customer success, product, could be sales, whatever. Those people can talk about the customer specific headlines. Headlines could be good, hopefully, or it could be bad, but something that you're surfacing up to everybody that here's a success with a customer or here's a big issue with a customer. Once again, these are headlines, so not everything about customers, just a headline about a specific customer that you're working with to make everybody aware. So you're spending, actually, there's one more. You're spending 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes going over all these things. The last thing here being the to-do list. Whatever to-dos came out of last week's L10 meeting for each person, they're going over that and just telling everybody here's what has happened with that particular issue, with that particular to-do. Hopefully it's done. And they're just reporting on that. Okay, so the first 25 minutes are done. Then you're going into the majority of the meeting, which is the issue solving track. This could be anywhere from 30 minutes to 60 minutes, depending on how big how big the members, the team is, the size is. So if it's 3 or 4 people, this could be enough. If it's any more than that, you have 6 people, 7 people, 8 people, this is not going to be enough for sure. You need 60 minutes for that. Okay, so adjust that accordingly. And this issue solving track, which we'll go into more later also, is where you're going over each issue and diving into with with sorting it first in importance and then diving into each one, making sure you're going over each thing until it's solved, until you have something that is, the actual solution for it. And then the last thing in the agenda for the weekly L10 meeting is going to be conclude. You're concluding it, revising the to-do list that you talked about in the beginning, if there's anything else that needs to be added, making notes of any cascading messages, which means that people who are not in this meeting but should know about something that was discussed in this meeting, you're going to tell them, here's what happened. And at the end, you're also going to rate the meeting as well. Okay, rating the meeting is by every member, very important, from the scale of 1 to 10, recording that for each person. Now I'm going to go over a meeting like this, a mock meeting with some meeting notes, so you can see exactly how this all comes into action. But I wanted you to understand the agenda. Very important to make sure you understand this is what the agenda is, and it's going to be exactly the same every single week. Here's what a L10 meeting template looks like. So you could take something like this, and then you can use it again and again for your meetings. I'm doing this in OneNote. You can do this in Microsoft Word, in Google Docs, wherever you want, but just ample space to be able to put the agenda and all the other notes in there for the team. So you start out listing who the participants of that particular L10 meeting is, who showed up that particular day for the meeting, hopefully everybody. And then you talk about these 5 specific things with a total of 25 minutes, starting with segue. Now, in the segue, very simple. You're sharing good news, personal news, professional news. Okay. Scorecard review. You're just going down the specific scorecard items assigned to you, and you're just saying you're reporting and not discussing like it says over here. And the main thing to call out is if it's on track or off track, each of the items. Same thing for rocks, on track or off track. And then after that, if there's any specific headlines, spotlights that you want to do for any significant customer news or prospect news or even employee news or something, you talk about that here in this section. Then the to-do list, I'm putting over here Planner, so that's Microsoft Planner. You can use the actual to-do list just from here to put to-dos in there in the IDS section, which I'll talk about in a second, or do it in Microsoft Planner, or do it in Trello, whatever system you use. Put in a to-do list from the last meeting in there, and then you're going over that to-do list for each person very quickly, once again reporting and not discussing at this time. Now, obviously, going over these top 5 things, you will have things that will come up that needs to be discussed. And that's when you drop it down to the IDS section. That's referred to as Identify, Discuss, Solve. It's also referred to as the Issues Solving track. So any issues, anything of significance that needs to be talked about, you drop it down from the top to here. Once you're done with the top 5, the remaining, this could be 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever makes sense, depending on how many people are in the meeting. My recommendation, if it's less than 5, 30 minutes would be okay. If it's more than 5, it's not going to be okay. It's not going to be enough to discuss. So you have those specific things that you've dropped down, or things from the last time, or things that people wanted to talk about. Everything goes in the IDS track. All right. You come over here. First thing is organize. If I think this is more important, I would move this number 2 that was to number 1. And we would discuss that first if that's more important. If this is the more important, you just remove that. And then you're going down each one, discussing it until it's solved. Obviously, managing time in a way where it doesn't get out of hand, but that's how you do it. Okay. And then conclusion at the end is 5 minutes. So you want to leave 5 minutes at the end to a conclusion, recap any changes or addition to the to-do list that you talked about. Anything needs to be added, go ahead and add it back there for each person. I mean, they did do it themselves, obviously. Cascading messages, anybody who is not a participant of this meeting, do they need to know something? And if yes, then you put that also in the to-do list if needed, or make notes of it and have the person tell the other people who are not here. And last, but definitely very important, is the rating for the meeting. So you're rating from 1 to 10. Each person rates. You can put it down here as to what did Sam said, what did Mary said, what did Asif say. And if it's less than 8, then it needs to be talked about as to what can we do better, what can be done better to make it a 10. So, since the whole thing is, the whole purpose, the whole goal is to get to level 10, right? So you want to list that down as to what could be done better. And that's how you conduct an L10 meeting. Let's talk about the company scorecard. A company scorecard contains leading indicators, also known as key performance indicators. These can be measured each week. Now, these are a handful of numbers, so 5 to 15 numbers, not too many. You have line items basically explaining what it is, and then a goal for each thing. And these give you the absolute pulse for your business. Okay, how is it doing right now? A snapshot every week. And also gives you the ability to predict the future. Are you going to hit your goals given where you are today? That's what the company scorecard line items are all about. Okay, so there are 7 truths of a company scorecard. Let's go over these quickly here. What gets measured gets done. Obviously, if you're not measuring it, you don't have your eye on it, it's going to get missed. So let's measure it. And managing metrics saves time overall. Definitely a truth. Scorecard gives you a pulse of today, ability to predict the future. So a snapshot of today and the progress you can see. You have to inspect what you expect. Question it if needed. If there's anything in the company scorecard that doesn't look right, someone's reporting, you can talk about it in the Identify, Discuss, and Solve IDS section if you need to. Definitely inspect what you're expecting. Accountability in high trust culture. Everybody trusts everybody, which is a wonderful, but how do you have accountability in that kind of a culture without pointing fingers at people? Well, this is how you do it. Accountability using the company scorecard. It does require hard work to do it, discipline and consistency to manage the whole thing, but it's definitely worth it. And last but not least, you need one person in the team who's going to own the scorecard. Just like any document, this is also a document. It's going to be usually an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. And you want someone to be able to go to if you need to understand the health of the scorecard the way it exists right now, right? And that's what this is talking about here. The 6 fundamentals of the company scorecard, starting with reviewing weekly with your leadership team. That's what you're doing for the company scorecard. Every leadership member is there and you're reviewing each scorecard item. with everybody. 5 to 15 numbers all together. That's it, no more. Someone accountable for each measurable. There has to be one name for each measurable. It cannot be two names. And of course, a goal for each measurable. Otherwise, it's just subjective, vague. If the goal is not hit, so during the week, let's say you wanted new leads, 5 new leads, and if that's not happening, you drop it down to discuss in the ideas section. And then you're looking at the whole picture 13 weeks at a glance. So every 13 weeks, you're looking at the whole thing and saying, what are the patterns? What are the trends? Are things working out or not? And if they're not working out, you need to change it. See, if the goals are not being hit, you need to reassess, reevaluate the goals for each of the metrics. You want to understand what the obstacles are, the targets are. Are there different action plans needed? How do you make a change so you're not just repeating the same mistake over and over? So you do need to adjust the scorecard as needed. Here's a typical company scorecard. I'm using Excel. You could use whatever makes sense. You can use Google Sheets, you can use even Word or whatever, but it just makes it easier to have cells, that Excel offers. So then you can put in numbers in a box. You want to be able to have a column for department. So marketing, product, sales, and customer success is what I have. Who is responsible for each of these measurables? So in this case, Lynn, who's the marketing director, Alex, product director, Lydia, sales director, and Nestor, customer success director. Measurables for each of these people. Some will have more than the others. So marketing has 3, sales has 3, product has 2, and customer success only has 1. That's okay, whatever is needed. But see, total, you got 9. So it's good to have between 5 to 15 company scorecard measurables, and I got 9 in this case. Let's go over some of the examples of the measurables. So I got number of new subscriptions. Let's say it's a SaaS product, and you want people to be starting the subscriptions that are available on the site, and you set the goal to be 2. Number of new blog posts for marketing, 1. Website traffic, 800 visits. Now, see, sometimes you'll want the smaller number, which is a better number. Like you don't want that many customer bugs. So the ideal here is that no one's reporting any bug. Everything is great. Features released in the product. Prospects successfully engaged with. So people who you want to become customers. Cost per qualified lead. You want to keep that low. So high number is going to be bad actually. So sometimes it's going to be you tracking a high number, sometimes you want it to be a low number, depending on the metric. Sales meeting held, 2, customer happy score 4.75. And when you're tracking it, you're just putting down the actual number, 1, 5, 1, 1. The goal here, the way I have this is you're tracking the numbers for the week before. So if you're having your L10 meeting on Tuesday, just to make it simple, you're tracking all the numbers from last week. Okay, so Monday to Sunday of last week. And I'm doing this over here. I believe I have 15 different sample numbers. So at any point in time, you can look at individual numbers and see if it's tracking the right way. For example, the cost per qualified lead started out pretty high, but then it started tapering down a little bit, so that's good. Number of customer bugs, good, good, but then we had a bad week. We could talk about it and that week's L10 meeting, see what happened. Website traffic, we had a really good number here. Okay, well, that's great. Do you want to talk about it? Is there something we did differently that we should do more? But then the week after was really small. That trend is not looking good in this case, so something is up and you want to talk about that. So it's good to talk about individual numbers, and it's good to talk about the numbers as a whole as well, because that's going to give you a much bigger, better picture of what has happened. And it's good to take 12, 13 week snapshots and see what the trend is going. And then if it's not something that you want the trend to go to, obviously you make changes. Or maybe the goal itself is not the right goal. You want to make change to the goal then. You want to keep it stretch goal, but still make it easy. Keep it stretch obviously, but make it so it's measurable, it's attainable. It doesn't demotivate people, right? So that's a typical company scorecard. So this concludes the focus day, in which we talked about all these different focus day tools: hitting the ceiling, accountability chart, rocks, meeting pulse, and scorecard. Next thing is to talk about the first of the vision building day one. And there's two of them actually. It's going to be two vision building days that we need to talk about all these different things on this list. Now, between focus day and the first vision day, there's going to be 30 days break, so you can start practicing the focus day tools first. Let's talk about the session objectives that we will cover in vision building day one. So first, we're going to talk about what has been the progress towards mastering the focus day tools that we've learned about. Next, starting to establish a clear vision for the organization, and then establishing a clear plan to achieve the vision, and also all throughout working towards clarifying issues that exist. So that's going to be the vision building day one. And then later, that's going to be 30 days after vision building day one. There's going to be vision building day two. We'll work on shorter term goals. So while in vision building day one, we talk about the big goal and the big vision, then day two, we start talking about the shorter term goals. We're talking about the 90 days, the 1 year, 3 year, and so forth. So we know the destination far along, and then we start talking about the destination that's in the smaller increments, the 1 year, 3 year, and so forth. And all of these, both of these days that we work with, we're going to be working to start off talking about the focus day tools first before heading into the rest of the agenda, because we all want to make sure that we get really, really good at the focus day tools all the way throughout. Let's talk about some of the to-dos that need to be done before vision building day one. First of all, rocks for the next quarter, and usually these are done for calendar quarters, so January, February, March, April, May, June, these are the quarters. You define the next quarter rocks. That we need to get going to start building traction right away. And having the company scorecard, and then strengthening it, making sure that it really shows the health measure of our company, the key performance indicators. That needs to be there, and you just need to keep refining it to make sure they're really, really strong. Accountability chart, super important. Want to make sure that accountability chart is as much fleshed out as possible with all the roles, the functions, and the people that are in each function. Start running the L10 meetings. Start with leadership, then start rolling it out slowly with other departments. Even if you're not ready to start rolling it out to departments, just start with your leadership team first and make sure you run the L10 meeting every week. And then just review the 8 vision traction organizer questions. Now these you will not be filling out before vision building day one. This will be done in vision building day one, but it's good to review these questions, the 8 different things, what you're going to be filling out in vision building day one. Lastly, to conclude the focus day, you're going to rate the day exactly how the meeting went. Treat this meeting and any other meeting that you do going forward as an L10 meeting. So you're going to be rating it from 1 to 10. And if the meeting rating is below 8, so if it's 7 or below, then everybody who's rating it that needs to talk about why they're rating it that. Okay, so if it's less than 8, what can you do better next time? And then write that down in the notes. If it's 8, 9, 10, you can still talk about what you liked about the meeting, but you don't have to. That's how the L10 meeting works for this focus day and every other meeting going beyond. So this concludes the focus day.